And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I am sure those of you who are fans recognize my guest, as this is his second appearance. I am truly grateful and honored to have him back on the show, and I am positive you all will enjoy it just as much. So without further ado, I give you the one, the only, the amazing Preston Dennett.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me on. There is another Preston Dennett somewhere in Kansas, but he's a little younger than me.
Copycat.
I wonder if he knows about me, because I can only imagine what it must be like, hey, do you know about UFOs? I imagine he's probably at some point gonna get that question.
Or he'll get the question, in your book, you talk about this UFO experience. And so, I want to get your take on it. And he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's funny. But yeah, I'm glad to be on the show. This is an important subject. And it's amazing to see how it's going into the mainstream news. And people are talking about it in Congress. They're pretending to disclose. That's fun.
I like how you said pretending to disclose, because I was going to ask you your feelings on that.
Yeah, I'm not even on the fence anymore. I kind of was, because it was neat to hear them taking the subject seriously and seeing senators and representatives saying there is a cover-up. During now it's not that recent with Grush, Fravor, and Graves. The Congress people were saying, there is a cover-up. Some of us have seen UFOs. Pentagon isn't cooperating. I thought, wow, that's pretty strong rhetoric. But they talked more than the witnesses did. It was all talk. There was no actual disclosure. The AARO office, AARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Oh, it just makes my skin crawl when I think about them and the stuff they're putting out. Resolution Office. Like, really, you're going to resolve this?
I wonder, and you may be the guest to answer this. Could that be like today's version of the Majestic 12 that was set up in the 40s and 50s, that was supposedly, researching and trying to prove UFOs or not, and in turn were actually covering up and burying all the evidence and stories?
Yeah, no, I don't. Well, I don't know. It's not really my area of expertise, the government shenanigans, but I suspect it's sort of their administrative arm a little bit to go out there and just keep people happy and mislead them. Take one
Right.
step backwards, two steps sideways, one step forward, three steps back. You know,
Yeah,
you know,
kind
take
of.
the man behind the curtain.
Right, kind of the look. We said we were going to investigate. We sent these people out. What more do you want? It's like that's not exactly what an investigation is.
Yeah, investigate. Right. Now they're going to investigate. After, I mean, oh, I get so angry when I think about it. You know, NASA saying, we're going to form a group and we're going to start investigating. We don't have enough evidence. I'm like, you don't have enough evidence, but you have how many thousands of satellites surrounding our planet that can read a postage stamp? And you don't have a single photograph that's credible of a UFO? We
Not
know
only that, but you have a station in space that's, up there 24/7 with people on it. Nobody ever sees anything.
I know for a fact they do because they're talking. Some of these astronauts are talking in confidence, and the word gets out fast. I talked to a lady who spoke to a very famous astronaut, and she asked him about it. And he told her, well, there's two camps, those who have seen them and those who haven't. But we all know. All of, so, yeah, I think that they've seen a lot of stuff up in space.
Yeah, so I want to make sure we touch on you have a new book out. So do you want to share a little bit about your new book?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. I've been putting out a series of books called Not From Here, and they're all basically articles I've written over, gosh, almost 40 years now, 35, no, 48, now that I actually count from when I started doing it. And they're all about the more unusual patterns in UFO cases, unusual cases, outliers, just weird stuff that some of the other researchers haven't covered or really just hasn't been explored. So the first 4 volumes, this is volume 5. The first 4 volumes covered such subjects as, let's see, UFOs over mines, UFOs over graveyards, or not only over, but landing in them, UFOs and rocket launches, phone call from an alien. That was a chapter. Believe it or not, there are cases of this. UFOs over prisons, the UFO Bigfoot connection, the alien clown connection, just weird kind of offbeat topics. And this latest book is probably going to be the last one for a while at least, because I've basically exhausted I wrote about over 100 articles over all these years that went into various magazines like the MUFON Journal or Atlantis Rising. I mean, there's a ton of magazines, especially back before the internet became really popular and everything went digital. And all these magazines have a short shelf life. They're on the magazine racks for a month and maybe 2, possibly 4 if it's quarterly, but then they're gone. I thought, gosh, all my research is, well, not all, but a good portion of it was not available. So that's what prompted me to put out these volumes. And with this 5th volume, I've pretty much got all my research that was written in articles out there. And this last one has a bunch of new stuff, actually, that wasn't in various magazines. There's one chapter that was, but I expanded it to twice its normal size. But yeah, in this book, I covered 10 different topics. And one is cases involving super fleets or UFOs seen by people that number over 50 objects in the sky at once. And I have to tell you, there are not a lot of cases like this. I had one myself. Yeah, that's what got me interested in it. But I thought, there's got to be more out there because I knew of another one. And I did a deep dive into the UFO literature and all my books that you can see behind me and the magazines. And couldn't find that many. I found maybe a little over half dozen, about 8 or 10. So that's one chapter.
So Fast Ed is asking, what's the book's name?
It's called Not From Here, Volume 5. And I called it that because I kept hearing that from witnesses. I don't know what it was, but it was not from here. After the fifth person told me that, I'm like, this would make a good title. Titles
Yeah,
are hard to find. You go on Amazon and you type it. Anytime I put out a new book, that's the first thing I do. I'm like, going on Amazon. Oh, 5 other people already have that title. And one is a subject I don't want it to be associated with. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's called Not From Here.
So I'm curious with your involvement with MUFON and with the UFOs. A lot of people are now in the paranormal community starting to research and get into looking at the UFOs. Have you had any paranormal experiences that you would say, oh, this definitely is, correlated to the UFO activity that was seen?
I personally definitely have, and many people I've interviewed have as well. So yeah, I'm going to say for sure there is a connection. I don't think they're the same thing. I know there's some people who conflate all the phenomena into one bundle and say it's an intelligence and it's masquerading as this and that, Bigfoot and near-death experiences and elves and fairies and aliens and blah, blah, blah. I think there's a lot of stuff going on. And I have to tell you, as soon as I found out UFOs were real back in 1986, and that my friends, family, and coworkers were having encounters, I learned how to interview. And I would just leave it open-ended and say, has anything unexplained happened to you? And they were like, oh, yeah, I had a UFO sighting and got a ghost in my house. Are you interested in that? I'm like, ghosts? No, ghosts aren't real. I found out, of course, they were. And it became clear to me that a lot of contactees in particular experience a very wide range of paranormal activity. So contactees started reporting to me near-death experiences and astral projection, precognition and healing and remote viewing, physical levitation. What else? Seeing shadow people, mediumship, clairvoyance, telepathy, all of it. And it became almost immediately apparent to me that there was a connection here. So I dove deep into that. I not only researched UFOs, but every paranormal topic I could find: channeling, demonology, angels, even multiple personalities I looked into. And yeah, I think there is a connection. When I started investigating UFOs, it took a couple of years, but I started to see them. I went out looking for them. I was really dead set to experience it myself, because it's really exciting talking to someone who's seen a UFO, and a little less exciting, but still equally exciting to read about it. But, seeing one yourself, oh my God, that is amazing. And that's when my belief turned to firsthand knowledge. I knew then that this was real. I already pretty much knew, because you can only, once you talk to 30 or 40 people and they're telling you the same thing, it becomes undeniable. But to see it yourself, it's like, wow. And I started having out-of-body experiences, and I started having a lot of paranormal stuff. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because I would talk to people who see a UFO, and they're like, well, started having out-of-body experiences. Or people are taken on board, and it wakes them up psychically, spiritually. And it became, as I interviewed people, because I started to really focus on people who were taken on board or had face-to-face contact. That's where I think most of the answers to what's going on here are. And they told me this over and over again. And it became clear to me that ETs have a mission, a goal, to wake people up to their own psychic abilities. Because in case after case after case, that's exactly what happens. So I think that's what the connection is, honestly.
That's interesting because me being a paranormal investigator, I can say I probably have had 3 or 4 that I feel like are definite UFO sightings or experiences, and I've only ever caught one on camera because I thought I really need to take a photo of this. But the one that I'm curious if you've ever come across is one I failed to document because I was in such shock about it. But above my house, there was a single cloud. That was like a big white cloud, and no other clouds really around it. And all suddenly there would be like, it looked like an explosion where it would be orange and then maybe red or green, two different colors back and forth on sides. And there's no sound, no thunder, no any of that. And my first thought was, I feel like I'm witnessing a UFO battle or a battle in space because it really did look like, a burst of like a laser hitting a shield, like we've seen TV. That's like the closest thing I could describe it to. And I was like so shocked that I was seeing this over my house. I went into my parents' house where I was visiting at the time, and I said, "You guys want to see a UFO battle?" And my mom goes, "Yeah." And we walked outside and we were just watching it for a few minutes, and there was no sound whatsoever. It's like you would think, with all the lightning, there's usually thunder. And the ball lightning, when I looked it up, did not look like these flashes. So I was just curious if you've ever seen or heard of any cases like that.
I have. Absolutely. There was a case of a gentleman I interviewed who saw exactly that, a giant kind of lenticular looking cloud over Costa Mesa. Hundreds upon hundreds of people saw it. He says there were little pastel lights flowing through it. I've heard of a number of cases like this. Don't think it's a UFO battle. I'm just going to put that out there. I've got no good, credible reporting on ETs fighting each other from any contactee, really ever. I know there are some reports out there. There's also a lot of misinformation and disinformation. I just don't have any good evidence that ETs are fighting each other in any real way. They cooperate. Right. They all know what each other is doing. We see them together on board a craft, mantids and grays and human-looking and little blue guys and tall whites. It's not unusual for contactees to see different ETs.
Right.
These are anomalous clouds, is what they are. That's what they're basically labeled in the UFO field. And I'm of a couple of minds about it. I think there are weather phenomena that are poorly understood. And there are clouds that are not, that can have, various gases in them that will ignite. And lightning is poorly understood in and of itself. One of these days, I'm going to write a book on lightning. I've done some research into it. Did you know there's like a 50 or 100 documented cases of people struck by lightning who actually healed as a result of a lightning strike?
Really?
Not kidding. Yeah, and people will be struck by lightning. It levitates them off the ground. Some really crazy stuff can happen with lightning.
Yeah. I just want to clarify that I'm not saying it was a battle either. I'm just saying that's what my mind made the experience to make sense of what I was seeing.
Yeah. Because rocket launches can leave big clouds that are somewhat can ignite gases, and clouds themselves can carry an electrostatic charge. But I don't know if that's what's going on here, because there's case after case after case of UFOs with clouds surrounding them, and suddenly the cloud will clear up, and it's a UFO. I mean, I just looked at a case from Florida where this black cloud is booking along against the wind, and the husband's looking at it, points it out to his not fiance. They were just married. They were on their honeymoon, and this UFO emerged from it, and he saw a little porthole, and there was a little being in there. It went back in right when he called out to her. Look, it was a cloud again, and they ran. This was quite close to them. But yeah, a lot of cases where people will drive right into a fog bank or UFOs coming in and out of clouds or hiding in clouds, and or even I think there's some cases that point towards this where they'll create a mist or a cloud around them. I mean, there's quite a few cases where UFOs are coming down and it's just all this mist and fog around them. So that could have been something what's going on there. Lenticular clouds are, of course, just a type of cloud that looks very saucer-shaped and have generated a number of reports. But you can tell pretty easily because they are just a normal cloud, in essence, that usually hovers over mountaintops and will stay in place for a long time, but can get enormous.
Right.
I ended up doing a lot of research into meteorology because you have to, if you're going to be a UFO researcher, you need to know your astronomy, your meteorology, and all the various sciences have a basic background in it. So
Right.
It's hard to say what's going on there. I would have loved to have seen it, but I don't know. I know that there's some weather phenomena that can be a little tricky, but yeah, lightning is still poorly understood. We don't even know a whole lot about ball lightning because there are cases where they come down and they'll come into people's houses and stuff and then exit through a window. And scientists say, well, that can't happen. Well, yes, it can. It absolutely can. There's enough cases. People try to explain UFOs as ball lightning. No, it's pretty darn rare.
No, and you're talking about doing a book on lightning. I believe it's in South America. Josh Gates on his show did an investigation kind of episode a little bit where he went to this place that was on the water and they would say, okay, you need to stay, from this time to this time away from the water. And they said, what? He goes, why? He goes, you'll see. And all of a sudden there was huge lightning everywhere, just randomly start striking, and it would just go for hours. And they're like, yeah, we know this is going to happen at this time, I believe is what they were saying. And they were like, yeah, it's like every night there's lightning. It never fails, I think, at this one location over water. And it's like several places. And so I was like, that is a mystery that sounds really cool to investigate.
Yeah. Well, they know that, the elements in the ground can be a factor here. Florida is the lightning capital of the world, or I mean, certainly the U.S. And Socorro, New Mexico has a lot of lightning. A bolt can come right out of a blue sky because they can travel many, many miles. And there's such a thing called heat lightning as well, which doesn't produce thunder. It can just flash across the sky. I was in an electrical storm not too long ago, and I've never seen anything like that. It's just flash, 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 flash for hours. It knocked down our electricity, knocked down the whole neighborhood. There were some fires. It's crazy. It's connected partially to our sun. CMEs, coronal mass ejections. All of this is connected.
Right. And switching gears back to like the UFOs, and I'm wondering if you've ever come across your research of talking with people and going, you've seen more UFOs than anyone else, or you are more in tune with, and finding out, well, the night you were born, there were UFOs in the sky above. And is there a correlation of, does that impact the children that are born when they're overhead, or is that just you were lucky to have a UFO over your head and it really doesn't impact your life at all?
Well, it's funny you say that because there's a number of contactee cases where that has happened. I believe that happened with Elvis, actually. And Elvis has this major UFO connection. I think he was a contactee if you look into his case. Yes, if I recall, there was a UFO sighting on the day he was born. I know of a case in South America, same thing. This guy was literally taken from walking home from school. He was missing for the full day. Everyone was looking for him. They found his school books. Like, he's not here. And he came back and he's like, you're not going to believe this. And like, no, we believe you because we found your school books. We've been looking for you. What happened? And when his mom was pregnant with him and had him, that she saw a UFO the day he was born. I think this is honestly intentional. I'm going to look into this. Now you got me really curious. Because I bet I could find a whole string of cases that would kind of like the UFO the day you were born. Kind of that would be interesting, because I don't know that there's ever been a study specifically on that. But now that you've brought it up, a couple of cases immediately come to mind.
Yeah, because I have a friend. I co-host Paranormal Versus with. I'll shamelessly plug Thursdays at 3:00, 3 times a month. But she often will say, she's really into the paranormal and everything. And she, if I remember her story right, is there was a UFO above when she was born that her parents actually saw it. And then she was born, or it was either she was born or conceived, either one.
Oh my gosh. More cases are coming. I'm remembering a lot of them suddenly. I had an encounter, actually, driving up the San Diego, honest to God, driving up the San Diego freeway. I'll never forget the date because it's a significant date. And I saw this object, perfectly round, it looked like, right over the freeway. And the 405 freeway is the worst freeway in the world. Don't go on there. You'll never get off of it. It's so crowded. I knew this, so I was driving in the middle of the night so I could at least move. And yeah, I was booking along at probably close to 70 miles an hour. Speed limit 65, so please forgive me, but everyone was doing it. And it was pretty crowded. And there was a very low cloud cover. I'll never forget it. I'm looking at this giant orange, well, actually yellow-white light, thinking, what the heck is that? Because it's right over the freeway. And this is, 1, 2, 3, 4 lanes at least, maybe 5 on each side. A big freeway. Thinking, gosh, what is that? Could that be a street light? I know it's not a building. There's nothing hangs over the freeway. They don't build anything over the freeway, except maybe a bridge. And as I got closer and closer to it, I could see there was nothing attached to it. And I'm looking up at it going, because no one's stopping. I didn't stop. I should have. But, you're on the freeway. And it's late at night. So I go right under it. I'm like, that is weird. I don't know what that is. I got a message. It said, your niece is born. Your niece has just been born. Not in English. I just knew it. And of course, it was true. I did not know. And her mother had seen a UFO very close up, seen grays face to face. It's in the family. Her brother saw a UFO and a humanoid. So there's a connection there. But yeah, that was the day she was born. So I think that is a thing. Absolutely. Because my sister, when she had just had her baby, he was 4 days old. She had a major UFO encounter. Not quite the birthday, but almost. They're very interested in reproduction, and they follow certain families. So the more I think about it, it doesn't really surprise me. I'm going to do research on that, Michael. You got me really intrigued. I want to see if I can find a bunch of cases, because that would be interesting.
Yeah, it might be a part 7 to your series.
Yep. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and that would be interesting to see, because there are so many things in our world that we can't understand or explain. And I was on a paranormal interview recently, and someone asked me, what got you into the paranormal and how do you define it? And I was like, that's a really good question. And I was writing an article for an online newsletter, And I said, and I researched paranormal and tried to define it to explain it. And the most basic definition is anything unexplained. And so I was like, well, if you go by that definition, then the whole field of paranormal blasts wide open. And I'm like, yeah, so we don't have to everyone be doing like ghost stories or parent or investigations. There's so many more topics, and it's like I love that I came across that because like I'm one of those that I'll put UFOs into the paranormal with respect that I'm talking about the UFO craft and where it's located, not meaning okay, this is US versus or deep state versus someone else made it. I'm like that's a different category.
Yeah, well, the universe is paranormal, isn't it?
It is.
Infinite. I always I looked at that because I finally decided, supernatural, paranormal, it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not breaking the laws of the universe. I think it just is clear evidence that we don't understand the mechanism of what's going behind, on here. And that's all it is. It's something we don't fully understand.
Right. And talking about the universe, I mean, Marvel's now introduced us to the multiverse, which science is starting to say is real. And someone was talking to me and they go, oh, you have this, that comes from the ultraverse. And I'm like, wait, I'm just now getting to the grounds of getting universe and multiverse. Now you're throwing in ultraverse? What? And it's like, yeah, we're learning so much and we're growing. I think a little bit faster than normal. I think lately. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's inevitable. At some point, we have to grow up. We definitely have grown very quickly technologically. The stuff that's coming out is crazy. I mean, you can see humanoid robots, and they're talking on TV. And if you didn't know that was a robot, you probably wouldn't know, because it looks very lifelike and can pass, the Turing test. Like, basically, answer questions and interact with people. I think our spiritual, well, maybe that's not the best word, but psychic development, ethical and moral progress is lagging behind. And I don't see a whole lot of improvement there. There's so much greed and corruption, division of wealth and divisiveness. And so I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think inevitably we're going to progress and become more aware. And I think each person, of course, is on their own pathway towards, spiritual mastery or awareness or whatever you want to call it.
Right. And I kind of wish, and I know this is, kind of hard to wish for, but I have the wish that, like, the paranormal community, the UFO community, all the different communities would unify and support each other and stop this bickering between each other saying, no, that's not real because I don't believe that. And it's like, it doesn't matter what you believe. You were supposed to be supporting one another. Everyone's experience is going to be different. Like, for example, MUFON. I used to follow MUFON a lot, and then I would hear, some people saying, oh, MUFON came and told me I was wrong, and then they came out and said, oh, we found this over here, and they were like, well, you told me that wasn't. And it was like they were either stealing or suppressing cases, and I was like, well, that's not cool. But then I'm like, especially, being MUFON. I was like, and then, it's like, well, that's one person. It's like, yeah, unfortunately, that is one person. And so, but
I have the same dream you do. Let's support each other. Let's get a consensus. There's a difference between belief and knowledge. You can believe whatever you want, but doesn't necessarily make it true. But certainly we should let love and truth guide our actions. I was shocked when I got involved in this field and realized it was political. Like, really? What? People were fighting to, get up and be the person who spoke at the convention. And I just laid back. I don't really want attention, honestly. I never thought in a million years I'd ever be speaking on the radio or going on TV or really doing anything like this. So it was a real shock when I found out, all the infighting that was going on, and the backstabbing and the gossip, and frankly, the lies and the misinformation, the disinformation, and the cover-up. That was not only shocking, it was infuriating. And you can see that in this field. There is absolute nonsense going on. And I don't know how I put this, it's intentional. There's a carefully organized, well-funded, carefully orchestrated disinformation campaign and suppression of UFO evidence, paid with our own tax dollars, very well funded. This is not okay. So I don't know how to fight something like this. And every UFO group, starting from the first ones like APRO, way back in the late 1940s, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization was formed by Jim and Cora Lorenzen, true heroes in my eyes. They were infiltrated by the CIA. Donald Kehoe, another hero, true honest-to-God UFO researcher, fought the Air Force and the cover-up and was treated very poorly. James McDonald, same thing. He actually finally convinced J.Allen Hynek to start being more forthcoming and, start criticizing the Air Force more vehemently, because he was towing the party line for a long time. This is what we're dealing with. So I don't know. I would love if we could all come together. I do know for a fact that in the UFO field, in the beginning, a lot of researchers wouldn't even touch humanoid reports. Like, it's okay if you had a sighting. If you think you saw an ET or a figure coming out of it, you're crazy. If you think you saw a UFO more than once, don't want to talk to you. If you think these things have ever crashed on this planet, nope. We're not going to talk about that. That did not become a subject of any serious study until the 70s. And even then, it wasn't really popular until closer to the 90s. So this is a field where it's very difficult to make progress.
I know, and even cases that are documented are still under contention. And one case that I find is really interesting because of the timing that it happened is, and people don't really know about it, and that is in World War II, the Battle of Los Angeles, they call it, where, they opened fire because they seen something in the sky. And when you look at all the images, with all the tracer, ammo in the sky, it's like, how did you miss the target? And at the same time, it's like, how could you not identify? You had so many lights and different sources up there. How is this a thing that, like, if you were to say to someone today, have you heard of the Battle of Los Angeles? Yeah, that was a great movie.
Yeah, I love, there's a book I have on this subject. There's a couple written, but the really seminal book is The Battle of LA, I think it's called, by Terrence Sword. It's so good. It's a sleeper book, but it outlines it in detail. There's no doubt that happened. I talked to a first-hand witness once because they tried to explain this as Japanese aircraft, and it wasn't just one. There was several of these craft. One was quite large, and many smaller ones. And the guy I talked to said it came right over his house. It was not a plane. It was very low, silent, looked really strange. But one of these big objects they all came from the ocean over the LA area, and one of them stopped right over Culver City. And you can see that photograph that with all the searchlights trained on it.
Right.
And get this, they shot 1,400 plus rounds of ammunition at it. 5 people died from car accidents and falling debris and heart attacks. And it's funny because in the first congressional hearings that we had about 4 years ago, the heads of the Defense Department, Moultrie and Daley, I'll never forget them sitting up there in Congress, all, being all sober faced. And they were asked, have we ever shot at UFOs? And the question had barely come out of the senator's mouth when they both jumped up very quickly and said, no. Nope. I'm like, you liars. I almost threw something at the TV because that's the case I instantly thought of. And I can think of a bunch of others. But yes, we shot at UFOs. And man, oh man, that's such an amazing case because it went on for hours. When they showed up, they put the whole city on lockdown. Everything went to it's called the LA blackout as well.
Yeah.
This was wartime. This was right after Pearl Harbor. 2 months, I think. And
I think there was even submarines involved, if I'm not mistaken.
I would have to look that up. I don't remember that. Could be. But I do know that there was a Japanese balloon that had an explosion which landed on an Oregon beach, and they tried to, relate it to that. This caused a cover-up. They tried to explain it as balloons and planes, but when that guy's picture came out on the LA Times, you can actually look this up with Freedom of Information documents. We now know that they did not know what this was and tried to shoot it down. Of course, you can't shoot down a UFO. They're very, very advanced. But you can see the shells, exploding around it in this one photograph. God thinks that there are other photographs out there.
And the sad reality is I can get in the 40s and 50s saying the UFO shot down was really a weather balloon because there's no internet. So not everybody can see what's going on, and would be like, okay, maybe it was misidentified. Okay, I could give benefit of the doubt to that. But today, they still use the weather balloon and say, oh, a weather balloon was shot down. I was like, the hell it was. That's no weather balloon. And going, you realize we have internet now. Everything is out there. You got to update your playbook because it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, they'll go to desperate measures. That's another thing I want to do a study on, the horrifying explanations that Project Blue Book came up with to debunk people's sightings. Roswell is a good example because the guy, Jesse Marcel, he's the head intelligence officer at Roswell Air Base. You think he doesn't know what a mogul weather balloon looks like? All the ranchers, they know these things would come down all the time. They know what weather balloons are. I think my favorite stupid explanation that the Air Force ever came up with, there was this case that took place at a high school in Massachusetts. This case was from Raymond Fowler. And this girl had seen a UFO go down the street at street level. And she's like, Mom, she came running down the stairs. There's a UFO. And she's like, oh, no, there's not. And she ran outside and she's like, there it is, it's going. And so they got a bunch of adults together and they went down there. And it was there. And there was 3 ladies who stayed there and got up to the field. There was 3 objects. One was hovering right over Beverly High School. And another was up in the sky, but quite low. And they're looking at it, and one of the ladies, they're in a group, waved at it. This darn thing drops down to they estimated it was 20 or so feet. I'm guessing it was probably closer to 50 or 100 because people, have a tendency to have difficulty estimating, which is actually an important point. They're telling the truth because unless you know the exact size of the object, it's very difficult to determine its altitude. But at any rate, it was right over their head, within a stone's throw. 3 ladies, 2 turn and run. The other lady's paralyzed with fear. She, basically lost control of her bowels. She wet herself. Poor thing. gosh. And finally, they were screaming and screaming and screaming, and she runs. They all run. They call the police. The police come. They saw it too. And Air Force, Project Blue Book, does an investigation. Do they interview the witnesses? No. They just hear about it and decide what they saw was Venus. That's what they saw.
At street level.
I don't know that there's ever been a case of anyone seeing Venus that became so frightened they wet themselves.
Yeah.
No. It's infuriating.
Yeah. But there's a question in the chat group, but before we get there, since we're talking about Project Blue Book, did you ever catch the History Channel series?
The fictionalized one, the drama?
Yes.
I did. I was so excited. And then I watched it.
Well, the one thing I thought was interesting about it is the guy, the civilian that was supposed to be the doctor that was supposed to help the Air Force cover it up, was like, wait a minute, aren't we here to investigate? We're not even going to the site and writing a report. How is this possible? And I was like, wow, they're actually telling the truth somewhat of the project.
I thought, they would cover actual incidents. I'm like, wow, okay, we're going to cover. I know this case. But I became kind of jaded at the dramatization because I started picking it apart. I'm like, well, that didn't happen and that didn't. I was hoping for something that was really true, but they absolutely captured that. Poor J. Allen Hynek. What a battle he had, because he's the astronomical consultant. He's like, here's a guy. There was a case in Nevada where an officer had just gone to flight training. He's pretty educated. He's a young man, comes upon 3 landed UFOs, gets out of his car, walks up to them. As soon as he gets close, they take off one by one. Real close, very clear observation of landed craft. No chance of misperception. Project Blue Book got a hold of this case, and what did they do? They attacked his mental capacities and did not do any other investigation. And if someone called and says, I see a UFO, and they know it's Venus, let's go down there. Let's check this out. We're going to fly down there. Exactly what you're saying. Anything that had a prosaic, conventional explanation, that's what they would investigate. Anything that was clearly unexplained, nope. And frankly, the best cases never even reached Blue Book. Anything that, quote, affected national security, which in itself is a joke, because these things, if they wanted to take over, we'd know it by now.
Yeah.
But they, the best cases with any evidence, photographs or anything like this, bypassed Blue Book and went to the Air Technical Intelligence Command, straight to Wright-Patterson. Blue Book never saw it.
Yeah, and what was interesting, too, talking about the Roswell incident, is I was there with a friend from the Netherlands, and we said, where's the crash site? And they go, which one? And we go, well, the one that's the, Roswell incident. And they go, there was 3. And we're like, wait. I'm like, I heard rumors of 2. When did there become 3? And it's like, how much, it's amazing when you talk to the locals, how much has been suppressed to where I'm willing to bet hardly anybody knows that there was 3 UFO crashes in Roswell.
Yeah, and more than that in New Mexico. I wrote, a series of books over various states, starting with UFOs over California, because that's where I was based. And there were some really interesting incidents. I mean, there was a little craft that was, must have been 4 feet across, crashed ostensibly in Northern California, but several incidents along those lines. And in New York, there was cases, all of them, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, every state that I wrote about had incidents like this. And the more I looked into it, because there are people who specialize in UFO crashes, like, Robert, Bob Wood and his dad, they have a whole book on it. A lot of cases. It's not just even 10 or 20. It's closer to 100 It wouldn't surprise me if it's more than that.
Right. And so the question that came up was Don Curtis's Don Curtis, sorry, Don, I was talking too fast. She is wanting to know, in your experience, do you think the ETs that go into the water are a different group that go underground or into the Antarctica mountains?
Well, it's kind of a trick question. No, I don't think. I think that basically we're dealing with ETs that have different ancestries. Different in the way that us here on this planet are different from each other, but we're still the same race. There's only one race on planet Earth. There may be ETs walking among us, but we all have different ancestries, right?
Right.
And the ETs are working together, and yes, there's little short grays, and there's tall grays, and there's tall whites, and there's mantids, but the message contactees get over and over again is, we are you, you are us, we are all one, we all share a common ancestry. So I'm not sure it's useful or accurate to sort of divide these into different groups. There are people who've tried to say, well, does this shape of a UFO contain this kind of ET? Why are these Andromedans and Pleiadians and Cygnus and Zeta ever taken? We love labels and names, and I cringe at some of the stuff I hear out there because I don't think the reporting on it is that good. I think they're all basically this. I don't want to say the same, but yeah, I think they're essentially the same group. They're all in concert with each other. I don't think it's a galactic federation or anything like that. I have no reporting on that. I don't believe there's a galactic federation because I just don't have any evidence of it in terms of first-hand accounts.
Right.
But yeah, they can go into the water, and all different types of UFOs and ETs do it. They can go into the ground as well. They're all over this planet. I've come to realize that pretty much every location on this planet has a long, rich history. And if you dig deep enough, you can find cases in this location. And name a city, name a state, name a country. I bet you dollars to donuts I can find a number of cases going way back in any location on this planet. I actually put out that challenge, and I've got a whole list of places people sent me, like, hey, you're find one in my hometown. So it's going to be a research project that I'm going to work on shortly.
I'll just say, careful what you ask for there.
Yeah, I actually have like 50 locations people sent me. Oh, great. Okay. This is going to be a lot of work, but I am super interested to see if I'm right about this because I think I am. So they're everywhere.
And they are. And
they can go into the water. And I interviewed this lady, Dolly Safran. She's my favorite contactee because her experiences, real quick, are so extensive. She's had so many contacts. She says they do go in the water all the time. And the main reason is not, so-called undersea bases, which she says, no. They don't need those. They don't have those. It's because their craft becomes superheated. And what we are seeing in these craft coming down to basically cool off their hull so they can, do what they have to do to pick people up. Because coming down through our atmosphere at super high speeds, this is why they're often seen as, this fiery glowing object coming down. And then it lands and you can see, and this is the steam and stuff that's coming off of it in clouds. You can see it's a metallic craft. I've got many, many cases of this. People see a star-like object, down it comes. It's not star-like anymore. It's a craft. But lots of USOs, a lot, all over the planet.
So I have like a two-part kind of question for you then. So UFOs and USOs are virtually the same thing then, which just we're identifying seeing one underwater versus in air. And then my real question is, why do you think the government and military has taken the common term UFO and now trying to make it UAP?
Oh, I won't even use that term. I hate it. because people, if you research UFOs, you're a ufologist. What if you're researching UAPs? You're a UApologist. I wonder if they knew that, because that's a terrible. I don't like. I mean, we're suffering from semantic disaster, is what I'm trying to say. When it
Right.
comes to this field, a UFO is a misterm anyway. I think we should start calling them what we pretty much know they are: extraterrestrial craft. I think it's another distraction. I think there's been some talk that they're using the term UAP to differentiate between a genuine extraterrestrial craft and a government reverse engineered craft, because there's a lot of those flying around. And if you want to call those UAP, well, no, it's not unidentified. It's and it's even the term phenomena bothers me, because it's it's
Right.
it's layering mystery on it when it's not needed. I think it's a distraction, and I don't like it, and I'm unhappy about it. They'll do anything they can to kind of pull people off the path. I think their
Right.
excuse was, well, let's call it UAPs to remove some of the stigma. You're the ones who put the stigma on this
Right.
subject. You did. So what are you doing?
And it's interesting too, because when you said UAPologist, when you said it quick, it was you apologize. It
Yeah.
almost sounded like you apologize. It's like, oh, I wonder if it's their way of saying we're sorry that we're messing with the term UFO. But I'm curious too. With I just lost the train of thought, so I'm going to jump over to Michael's question. Is can you speak on the best ways to call in a drone when out to sea?
A drone, like an ET drone? I'm assuming you mean ET drone. Uh, well, I mean, CE5s have been around for a very long time. Of course, Stephen Greer, he's a pretty polarizing figure in the UFO field. I've met him several times. Always been nice to me. I think he is a genuine contactee. Uh, he popularized the idea of close encounters of the fifth kind, calling down a UFO. It's a human initiated contact. But if you look into the UFO literature, you'll see this has been going on for a while. And there's many cases dating all the way back to the 50s of people like turning on searchlights and a UFO will show up. That happened in Norwood, Ohio, over a period of 2 years. The Norwood searchlight case. Look it up. It's amazing, because they actually caught photographs of this thing in the searchlight beam. That happened in France. I've got some of my own cases that predated the whole CE5 movement. So lights is one method that's often been cited to call down UFOs. But Sisto Paz Wells, a contactee, has been doing this long before this was popular. He's from Peru. And he was basically using meditation, which is, I think, the most effective method. But yeah, you basically meditate and visualize your location and reach out mentally to the UFO occupants, the ETs, and call them down with consciousness, with telepathy. Because let's face it, they are telepathic. They're very much on top of things. They're watching over all of us. I've come to realize this. And almost without exception, when they do communicate with people who are having contact, it is telepathic. So it can be very effective. I've got a number of cases of people who are like, gosh, I wish I could see a UFO. One shows up, or they'll start talking about it. I'm like, you're not going to believe me, but we were just talking about this subject, and that's when it showed up. So there's something to that. But I want to give a caveat right now, because we're in a new era. We're in 2024. And talking with Dolly, I'm going to bring up Dolly Saffron again, because she's my go-to gal when it comes to this subject. She's like, listen, our magnetic fields have gone down by 40%. She's very much into science, and what the ETs taught her this as well. And they basically bugged out. They are not here. And most of what people are seeing, pretty much all of it, is reverse engineered. So if you're going to go out there and call down a UFO today, I had another contactee tell me this. He's like, you need to put this in my chapter, because I wrote his chapter in my book, Humanoids and High Strangeness. He says, you need to tell people, warn them about CE5s, that you could call down these nefarious government folks who could come over and wreak havoc. So I'm a little wary of encouraging people to do CE5s and try to call down a craft. On the other hand, reaching out telepathically and developing a rapport with ETs, I think, is absolutely doable, and I highly encourage that. Develop your psychic abilities to the best of your ability to do so, because you can absolutely do that and get telepathic messages. A lot of people, contactees in particular, say that they are still in contact and they do get messages. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mess going on right now with CE5s, but consciousness and telepathy and meditation, that I think would be the way I would recommend reaching out to ET. And they can still, kind of remote view, I guess would be the way to put it, or even make a little bit of an appearance, because they are that advanced where they can show themselves to you. So
Right.
we're not completely dead in the water here.
Yeah, and admittedly, when I first heard of Stephen Greer saying, you have to shoot a laser pointer up in the sky to get their attention to come and visit, my first thought was always, these people and these beings traverse time and space. Why would they need a laser to say, oh, you're over there. We thought you were over here. I'm so glad you pointed that laser so we didn't go to the wrong spot.
Yeah, I would not recommend lasers. They're illegal to point at aircraft, just so people know, because that will blind pilots. And there's been people who've gotten real trouble for that. I asked Dolly Saffron about that. She's like, no, don't do that. Because she actually was taught by the ETs how to pilot these craft. Now, I know how that might sound to a skeptic, but read Grant Cameron's book, Sky Pilots. He outlines 40 plus cases of people. And I've talked to other people who've had this same experience. And I've done CE5s, and you just bring a powerful flashlight. You can get some really powerful flashlights these days. And you blink at it, the UFO will blink back. And when that happens, boy, that's thrilling. That is so cool.
Right. So I lost my train of thought on the question, but I thought of another one, and I don't know if this is one that you've ever been asked or touched on, is what is your feelings of people saying we've seen UFOs and then like crop circles appear on the ground? Are they related, or are they just two different phenomenon that just happen to be at the same spot?
I suspect they're related. I have to tell you, I'm not a crop circle researcher. I followed it. Barbara Lamb, I love her as a researcher. She's done a lot of work into this. Colin Andrews, a bunch of people have far more experts on crop circles than I am. But I have looked into it. They're real, 100% real. If you look into the research of Dr. Levengood, I think is his name, where he examined these stalks, whether it's rape or corn or wheat or whatever, under an electron microscope, you can see that they're not crushed. The little cell walls are burst and exposed to some kind of radiation or electromagnetism. And they're laid down and they're woven together. You can easily tell the fake ones from the real ones. And I do think that they're probably done by ET. I asked Dolly about this. She's like, oh, yeah, this is another way that they reach out and talk to people. But so interesting. And I love the crop circles because they're clearly genuine.
Yeah. My question just popped in my head. Nice. But you can finish if you want to.
All right. Yeah, I love the crop circles. Some are so complex. They're so beautiful. And they're so obviously meaningful. And there are people out there who are specializing in it, who have basically found amazing mathematical corroborations or correlations. I mean, one was clearly the Fibonacci sequence. There's one that shows an ET head and a record clear referencing the Voyager probably, and
I think
some that
wasn't there
show
one too that was like DNA and the star system?
And some that are so complex, people are like kind of going, I mean, there's one that's just amazing. It's real long.
Yeah.
I think they're fascinating. I think it's another very clever method because these ETs know what they're doing. They're hovering over drive-in movie theaters. I wrote a book on that. Over schoolyards. Oh, I could talk about that for 2 hours. They are very clever in their methods of waking people up and alerting people to think in new paradigms and think out of the box and consider new ideas and just waking people up in any way they can.
Yeah. So the question that I was wanting to ask your opinion on is, it's kind of something that I've formulated from putting pieces together with other guests is, so we have the Nazca lines where they're glyphs obviously visible from above, so they weren't man-made, so to speak, because how would we know what we're making without having a means of saying, yeah, that line needs to go here, here, so we have the image. But we were talking one day and said, there's sandstorms, because it's desert, there's winds, but yet these images never change. So is there an energy barrier around these, and could UFOs be using those to be like you're saying, house maybe people that they abduct, refuel, go where they need to go, or go where they're going? Could that be what's happening in those glyphs? Because it is a phenomenon that no one really researches. We know they're there, but it's like, yeah, everyone's just like, they're there.
Yeah, well, there are people who've researched it intensely. I'm not one of them, but they keep appearing in my books. When I buy a book on the paranormal, the Nazca lines are invariably brought up. And they're not unique, actually. These are all over the world. There's the Blythe intaglios, I think they're called. Very, very similar. And from what I understand, they are made by ancient people who probably encouraged or inspired, rather, probably a better word, by sightings. And there was more open interaction with ETs among indigenous populations many, many, many generations ago. You can see this with Native Americans who talk about this. Their oral tradition talks all about this. And Artie Six Killer Clark, if you read her books, she references this in a few of her cases as well. I suspect the Nazca lines are something along those lines. I don't know that there's been any research pointing towards them having any force field around them or anything like that. It's a good point that you make, that they're still there after all these years. But
Right.
if you look around the world, I know the show Ancient Aliens really thrived on this and really became extremely popular because they started visiting sites like this, whether it's megalithic monuments or Stonehenge or Easter Island or the pyramids or these sand carvings or whatever you want to call them. They're, I think, related to all of this, certainly. Yeah, it's hard for me to speak on that. That's really not my area of expertise. I know what's in the books and what I've read in the public arena.
Right.
I'll have to see if I can get any information from contactees about that, because that would be interesting to find out from an ET perspective. What those might be and how they when did they get made and were they human made, and was it in response to ET visitation? That's my understanding. Was it in response to ET visitation?
Right, and I understand, and I know it's not your forte, but I was just curious if you, and like you're saying, reading your books, if you had come up with theories of, maybe this is what this is. So Yeah, I wasn't meaning to say, yeah, you study the Nazca
Oh no,
lives.
that's all right. I'm happy to answer any questions because it is connected. All this stuff. I think you're not doing your research if you don't start looking into all the way down to cave. I looked into this cave paintings. Let's study hieroglyphics. I studied all the Renaissance paintings. Boy, is that interesting.
Oh, I
And
know. All the UFOs and the paintings that everyone's like, no, they weren't around then. I'm like, it's in the painting. How are you telling me this wasn't around?
yep, the wood carvings from the Middle Ages, 1500s and 1600s. It's amazing. Astronomer. Well, one of the chapters in my latest book, Not From Here, Volume 5, I did a whole chapter on astronomers who've seen UFOs. And it goes way back. Some really famous astronomers like, Edmund Halley, that's right, 1676. He had sightings of a UFO, 9,000 miles an hour, big as, God, he said it was bigger than the parent size of the moon. A big object moves across the sky. And that was 1676. And if you can't trust an astronomer, who are you going to trust? They're trained observers. They know what's going on in the sky. And so many astronomers have seen UFOs. People have no idea. Really famous astronomers have seen UFOs.
All right. Well, we've actually gone over the hour a little bit. And so I know you have things you're needing to do, I'm sure. And, I appreciate your time and coming on. And I'd love to have you on again and continue delving into this topic and your experiences.
Hey, anytime. Yeah, I've had quite a few. Very cool.
But so, this is a new thing since you were on the show last time that I'm liking to do now is
Uh-oh.
from your personal experiences. It doesn't have to be through research or anything, just your experiences in life in general. Is for the people that are watching this episode, whether live right now or on replay, what is a golden nugget that you would like to leave them with?
I would say leave fear behind and have fun. We're immortal beings. There is life after death. Fear seems to be a guiding force in our lives, especially fear of death, and it's just not true. So yeah, leave fear behind and have fun. That's why we're here.
I love that. And yeah, so thank you again for coming on, and thank you to everyone in the chat room, and thank you, Dolly Saffron, for your comments in the chat room. I always appreciate you coming on when Preston comes on. And so, from all of us here to all of you out there, have a great night, great day, great afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Make each day filled with love and joy. And like Preston says, leave the fear behind. Embrace the joy in life. And with that, I think we're ready to say goodnight to everyone. So, thank you.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.